Hey everybody, so today I'm going to give you a video that's a little bit different than what I've been doing for the last little while. Um, I've been bouncing around in my brain wanting to do a vlog about women and gaming because it is still a really big issue. And this morning I got sent a screenshot from my friend Katie, who is a hardcore gamer down in Texas, and it talked about women not being as good at games as men because men naturally have better intuition and fine motor skills, etc., etc. And it was sourced from someone who actually works really high in the video game industry, and it was all about esports and why basically it's more for men and not for women, and because of things like it's less about how you look and manipulation, which is what women get by in the real world, which is so not true. And it really, really made me want to talk about the sexism in gaming against women, and there's some against men and against those who are gender neutral. And so the first thing is, if you go to get into video gaming as a woman, and I've been a woman for 30 some odd years, if you walk into a store that sells gaming equipment, video gaming equipment, a lot of the geeky stores, they treat you differently when you're a woman than if you're a man. I've oftentimes had people assume that I'm there to buy a gift. And the same thing happens with my mother. We're both very into gaming, and we go into those stores to buy things for ourselves, and they assume we're there shopping for someone else, especially my mother being a significantly older female. They just definitely assume that she's not there for herself, when usually she's seen something in the window that she wants to purchase. And so that's the first thing. And even when Mr. Matt and I go in together, sometimes they just default assume that we're there for him. Or if I go in to buy him a gift, they assume that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I've had them try and convince me that what I know is not right, which is really, really irritating. And that happens in a lot of things for women in the real world. So then the next part is when you go to play the games and you pick an avatar. So first off, the games that only have male avatars available, especially when they're rolling out their trial run. Fortnite was a really great one. I love Fortnite, but you can only play as a male, which is frustrating when you identify differently and you don't get to see yourself in those games. And as an adult, I can say, well, whatever, that's how they're doing it, even if it does annoy me. But the younger that you are, you go, oh, well, this clearly isn't designed for me. And that's the key point, is that women get deterred from playing video games when they're girls, when they go to play and people in the game aren't welcoming to them, or they right off the bat they can't play as something that they identify with. And that comes actually down to the sexism towards people who identify as female and people who identify as not having gender. One of the biggest annoyances about video games now is that you have to go in and identify as a male or a female. And I really don't understand why. You identify as male or female. One thing that's really driving me crazy, if you watched, I did a review of the Darwin Project, I think it's great. What frustrates me is that when I win clothes all the time, they're male and they don't transfer to my female character. So I have all these clothes sitting in there that are male, but my avatar still looks like a new player because I've only gotten a couple of female items. And what I don't understand is why games are even asking us to do that. Because you go into games and you can pick your hairstyle, which is another thing, that certain hairstyles are male or female. And there are games where you can adjust your face and your body structure and everything. And what I think video games really need to do is to stop picking male or female and just let you pick those different options. Let you pick your clothes, let you pick your hairstyle. And that would open the gaming world up to a whole new generation of people who don't want to be identified as male or female, or who think that it's sexist, and especially to women and to people who are gender neutral. Because again, they're not seeing themselves on the screen, they're just seeing these straight up male gendered characters. So starting with the gender selection is something that video game companies could work on, and that leads into what they wear and their hairstyles, because there are men who have feminine hairstyles and there are women who have masculine hairstyles, and there are people who just think a hairstyle is a hairstyle, why does it have to be one way or the other? And it is frustrating to play those games and again not see yourself or the people that are in your reality reflected on the screen, especially with the clothing. I think one of the biggest frustrations for a woman is I'm not an overly sexy woman. I do like to play a video game every now and then and be able to be like a hot little warrior, petite little person, because in real world I'm like 5'9" and I will never be that adorable little petite character. And so it's nice to be able to go into games and make that option. But at the same time, it is frustrating when you see a male and female version of a costume come out in a game, and the female version is overly sexified and unrealistic. And for me personally, I actually work with young women. I work with young women teaching them life skills, particularly outdoor skills. So when I watch these games and I'm playing as a female character and I see what they're wearing versus the male character in a post-apocalyptic or in a survival setting, and I'm going, I wouldn't wear this in real life. Like, it's unrealistic, but the male clothing is far more realistic. And that's the part that the inequality comes out of. Because if you make the male and female characters both unrealistic, you're being equal. It's when you make one really realistic and the other one is this fantasy of how women should be and women warriors should be. It's disappointing and it's frustrating and it's discouraging to these young women who, as girls, won't get into gaming or will get into gaming and be deterred, and then they grow up to be women who aren't welcome in gaming. And the reality is, for example, Mr. Matt and I play on different skill sets. That doesn't come out of a differing interest in video games. I've been playing video games my whole life. It comes out of, I grew up in a house with a brother and a sister. I was the sister, I have a brother. And my parents treated us equally when it came to video games, but other people would be more likely to gift my brother video game paraphernalia and items than they would me. So my brother actually developed better gaming skills, and the same with Mr. Mad. We both grew up in the same geographical area. We both grew up with parents who let us do what we want. But the reality is, the outside world and how it influences, it was much more acceptable for him growing up to be into that than it was for me. So there was a lot of deterrence for me to play video games a lot growing up, and I actually played them a lot more than most girls would. And that's something that not just in the gaming world, but that women and girls face every single day. I mentioned that I work with young women. I had one young woman who, it's the first week of school. They've only been there for, I think, 4 days. And on the first or second day of school, her male teacher was talking about a overnight that they're doing next week, and specifically targeted the female students to say, you can only bring one bag. I know how girls pack, but you can only bring one bag. And he just assumed that all of them would pack extra, not knowing that this girl and several girls in her class have actually done survival and hardcore camp training with me. And I know that their skill set, they can pack for like 3 weeks in one little bag if they had to. And it's frustrating because they, again, is every single part of their lives. And so the gaming industry really needs to step up and start eliminating those things. And again, it's not just how the other players are, because they are getting better, but they're still not treating male and female characters equally. And you can tell a lot of the time. For example, I play as Mrs. Mad. I'm clearly identifying as a woman, and you don't necessarily get boys playing with feminine names, but you get a lot of girls playing with masculine names. And part of that is because when you walk into a game, people treat you differently if they think you're a woman. almost always play with a female avatar and a female name. I will take Mr. Mad's user, and I will play a game where we both have equal stats, like we both are brand new, or we both have the same amount of experience. And the experience that I get from other players and the reaction is completely different. Even though I'm the same person, it's a different avatar and it's a different screen name, and the stats could be very similar. And we have found him and I will go into a game together and play a squad match with strangers, and even if they're people we've played with a few times before, they default to him before me. And he will be there on the mic saying, like, follow Mrs. Mad because she knows what she's doing. Because there are some games that I'm a little more intuitive and a little bit better than him. And there's a lot of games that he's better than me because I have other hobbies. I love my husband, but he loves video games a lot. And so there's two people sitting there playing with almost the exact same stats, and oh, well, he's a male, so he must know what he's doing more so than me. And especially in a game when everyone's new, they just assume that the men are going to be better. And I have watched games and I have seen other players go after the female players first to eliminate them before they'll go after the male ones. And there's just this entire vibe about it, and it is a lot better from what I've heard, and in some places still really, really bad. And again, I think that comes down to not just the player's mentality changing, but how do you change that player's mentality if the environment is still the same? If the environment still is segregating the male and female characters separately, and the gender neutral characters are not even welcome. So the reality is, I think that's what gaming needs to be done. We as players need to stand up for other players and need to ask and push and get the video game companies to say, hey, like, your gender doesn't matter in a video game, because why does it? And it might be a little extra work to do 2 graphics than 1, but again, even just that initial click of male or female to build your character, why can't I just build my character from all the options and take this, quote, male haircut and put it on a feminine face with a masculine shirt and a feminine pants and the shoes that I feel like wearing that day? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I think the root of getting rid of this sexism in the gaming industry does have to come from the game creators, and it has to come from how they create their games, how they communicate them, how they react to female players and how they react to male players. Male players get invited to tournaments way more than female players do, and people will argue that it's because women don't play on that skill level, but it's also that women aren't given the opportunity to play on that skill level. So maybe your tournament has an extra round that's just for female players. They may not be the best of the best of the best, but they may be the best female players that are available, and it gives them that platform, and it would give them the opportunity to improve their skill and to get a title and to get the respect and prestige, so that then when they go into the other games, they are treated like that. And they'll pick popular players, and, you know, if a female player has done a few tournaments and won a few times, maybe she gets more followers, and then maybe you'll think she's worth putting in your high-end tournament. So it's just things like that. It's thinking about what can you do to make sure that men and women and gender-neutral persons get the same opportunity and the same experience. And it's not saying, well, just because you're female, you get a spot, but it's creating an environment in which that spot is actually obtainable as much as it is for a male player. So I hope that this opened your mind to a few things that are maybe wrong with the gaming industry. And if you agree or disagree, please add it into the comments. If you have other points about sexism in gaming, I would love to hear it. If you're a troll or you're just going to tell me that blah, 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 anti-female players or anti-transgender, then you can just go ahead and just not. So have a great weekend.